Hi everyone, it's Miss Dubas here. Welcome to the third lesson about climatic hazards. Today we're going to be focusing on the distribution of tropical storms. Please make sure you've got a pen, a piece of paper and a different colour to mark with, and make sure that you're working somewhere quiet and free of distraction so that you're able to really focus on your learning. So whenever you're ready, let's get started. So the focus of this lesson is all about the global distribution of tropical storms. So where in the world do they happen? The word distribution means the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area. And in this case, we're talking global scale. So they don't just happen randomly in random places, they happen in very specific places. So we're going to find out today where those places are and a little bit about why it is that they form in certain areas but not others. So before we study the distribution of tropical storms, let's think really carefully about what we mean by a tropical storm. So what is a tropical storm? The first thing to note is that it is a meteorological natural hazard. That means it's linked to weather and climate. Because it's linked to climate, we also have to think about the impact that climate change may have on tropical storms in the future. A tropical storm is a low-pressure rotating weather system. Low pressure means that warm air rises, cools, condenses to form cloud, which is how we get the storm forming in the first place, and it rotates due to the Coriolis effect on our planet. So these storms are spinning. In the northern hemisphere, tropical storms will spin anti-clockwise, whereas in the southern hemisphere, tropical storms will spin clockwise. Now, some very interesting facts about them as well. They can be up to 6 miles in height. Not only that, they can be up to 400 miles wide. And their travelling speed is between 10 and 15 miles per hour. So maybe not as fast as you might expect. The satellite image that you can see on the screen here shows an image of Hurricane Katrina from 2005. So you can notice this rotating cloud, this rotating weather system. And in the centre of a tropical storm is what we call the eye of the storm. So it's a very clear area. These storms are incredibly dangerous, and we're going to find out a little bit more about their effects in future lessons. So just to check that you've understood everything so far, I would like you to answer the questions below. So number 1, what type of natural hazard is a tropical storm? Number 2, are tropical storms high or low pressure systems? Number 3, in the northern hemisphere, which direction do tropical storms spin? Number 4, how high can tropical storms be? Number 5, how wide can tropical storms be? And number 6, what is the usual travelling speed of a tropical storm? So please pause the video to complete the answers to the questions and then resume the video when you are ready to mark your work. So we're now ready to mark our work, so please make sure that you're using a different colour pen to do this. Give yourself a big tick if you've got it correct, and if you need to make any corrections, that's absolutely fine. So number 1, what type of natural hazard is a tropical storm? It's meteorological. Number 2, are tropical storms high or low pressure systems? They are low pressure systems. Number 3, in the northern hemisphere, which direction do tropical storms spin? Anti-clockwise. Number 4, how high can tropical storms be? Up to 6 miles high. Number 5, how wide can tropical storms be? Up to 400 miles wide. And number 6, what is the usual travelling speed of a tropical storm? 10 to 15 miles per hour. So please give yourself a score out of 6. So now we know what a tropical storm is, let's consider this question. Why are tropical storms so hazardous and therefore a risk to humans? You can see from the images on the screen, which were taken after Hurricane Katrina in 2005, that tropical storms can have devastating impacts. They are really, really hazardous, they're really dangerous. So every year between 80 and 100 storms occur in certain areas of the world, so not everybody will experience tropical storms, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that in the rest of this lesson. They're incredibly dangerous or hazardous because of their strong winds, between 74 to over 156 miles an hour. And if any wind speeds exceed 156 miles an hour, we call those storms Category 5 storms. The other hazard, the other danger posed by tropical storms is their high level of rainfall, so up to 250 millimetres in one day, sometimes more. They're also dangerous because they can cause storm surges. This is where the strong winds blow seawater towards the coastline, flooding the coast. Lastly, one reason why tropical storms are quite hazardous is they can also create tornadoes on land adding additional pressures to the already challenging situation. So in order to check that you've understood those facts and figures, we're going to do a quick activity. So I'd like you to pause the video in a moment to complete your task. I'd like you to copy and complete the sentences below by choosing the correct answer from the brackets. So you should have 4 completed sentences. Once you've done that, please resume the video so that we can mark your work. So we're now ready to mark your work. So make sure that you have your other coloured pen so that you can make any corrections if needed. If you've got the answers correct, please make sure you give yourself a big tick. So this is how your sentences should read. Number 1, there are up to 100 tropical storms each year. Number 2, Category 5 storms have wind speeds exceeding 156 miles per hour. Number 3, within one day, tropical storms may produce 250 millimetres of rainfall. And number 4, storm surges and tornadoes can also be caused by tropical storms. So give yourself a score out of 4. So we're now going to find out about tropical storm distribution. What we mean by that is the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area, so on a global scale. They don't affect everybody across the world. They happen in certain places. So we're going to find out where those places are. So in order for us to describe the distribution of tropical storms, we need to make sure that we're really clear about where the different oceans are located on our planet. So this is just a little reminder, and if you need to pause the video at this point, just to make sure that you're really clear about the location of oceans, that is absolutely fine. So there are 5 major oceans. We've got the Arctic Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, the Southern Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. On the map, you'll also notice the equator at 0 degrees. Anywhere north of the equator is the northern hemisphere, and anywhere south of the equator is the southern hemisphere. So we're now going to think about where tropical storms are formed, and therefore we're going to consider their distribution. By distribution, we mean the way in which tropical storms are spread out across a geographical area, and in this case, we're referring to the global scale. So the first thing to note is that tropical storms only form over oceans. The sea temperatures must be approximately 26.5 degrees Celsius to a depth of 70 metres for tropical storms to form. On the map, it shows you in orange where sea temperatures are over 27 degrees Celsius. So this gives you an idea about where tropical storms form on our planet. It also highlights that they don't form everywhere. They only will form in certain places. They usually form between 5 degrees and 30 degrees north and south of the equator. However, they are mainly concentrated between the tropics, so between the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere and the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere. The Tropic of Cancer is 23.5 degrees north and the Tropic of Capricorn is 23.5 degrees south. Tropical storms rarely will form within 5 degrees of the equator. And usually they form in greater concentrations in the northern hemisphere, and you can see this on the map. What you can also notice from the map is that depending on where tropical storms form depends on their name. So in some areas we call tropical storms hurricanes. They can also be called cyclones, typhoons and willy-willies, depending on where in the world they form. So we're now going to practice a geographical skill. We're going to describe the distribution of tropical storms. The best way to think about this is to imagine that I cannot see the map that's on the screen. So you need to describe to me the distribution of tropical storms in so much depth that I can recreate the map in my mind. So what I would like you to do is to create a paragraph which includes the following details: ocean temperature and depth, ocean names, latitudes, names and latitudes of the tropics, the equator and hemispheres. So I'd like you to write this up in a paragraph. You can use the map on the screen to help you with your paragraph, or if you want to try and challenge yourself, you might not look at the screen or look at the map whilst you write your paragraph. So please pause the video to complete your task and then resume once you have completed your paragraph, and we will mark the work together. So we're now ready to mark our piece of work, so make sure that you're using a different colour pen to do this. If you've included something that I've included in my model, you can tick it. If you think you've missed something out, you can add it in with your different colour pen. If you really want to, you could redraft the paragraph after to ensure it includes all of the key details. So tropical storms are distributed mainly between 5 degrees and 30 degrees north and south of the equator. They form over oceans with a water temperature of 26.5 degrees Celsius to a depth of 70 metres. They form in oceans such as the Atlantic Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. Tropical storms are mainly concentrated between the Tropic of Cancer, 23.5 degrees north, and the Tropic of Capricorn, 23.5 degrees south. Rarely do tropical storms form within 5 degrees of the equator. More tropical storms form in the northern hemisphere. So this paragraph covers all of those key ideas you were asked to include within your answer. So as we've seen, tropical storms will only form in certain places, and they'll only form if the conditions are suitable. So we're going to just consider 3 different reasons as to why tropical storms form in the areas that they do. We know that they don't form everywhere, and therefore they don't affect everybody on the planet, but we do know they form in certain places. So as I say, we're going to consider those 3 different reasons as to why tropical storms form in these certain places. So the first reason why tropical storms are located or formed in the areas that we have found out about today is due to the sun's energy or insolation. So the sun's energy is more concentrated between the tropics. This heats the ocean to 26.5 degrees Celsius. Heat and moisture are available for rapid evaporation. Warm air rises, cools, condenses, and forms storm clouds, and this creates low pressure. So therefore, these storms can form because there is the heat energy available for storms to be created. The second reason why tropical storms form in the areas we have found out about today is due to something called low wind shear. The wind in these areas experience low wind shear, meaning they are constant and stable. This allows tropical storm clouds to form without being torn apart. If there was high wind shear, it would mean that the storm clouds would not remain stable and the storm clouds would be broken up and the storm could not form. The final reason for tropical storm formation and their location is due to something called the Coriolis effect. You'll remember that we said that tropical storms rarely form within 5 degrees of the equator. Let's think about why that might be. So as the Earth rotates, it causes wind to bend. This causes tropical storms to spin. The Coriolis effect is weak over the equator, meaning that tropical storms are unable to spin. So therefore, this indicates to us that tropical storms will not form within 5 degrees of the equator. So we're going to finish with a final main task. I'd like you to answer the question below. Explain why the conditions below are needed for tropical storms to form. 4 marks. So part A, oceans with a temperature of 26.5 degrees Celsius, and part B, low wind shear. So please pause the video to complete your task, and when you are ready, please resume the video so that we can mark your work. So we're now ready to mark your work. So please ensure you've got a different colour pen in order to help you to mark the work correctly. If you've got something correct, give it a tick. If there's something you've missed out, please add it in with your different colour pen. So part A, oceans with a temperature of 26.5 degrees Celsius. If ocean waters have a temperature of 26.5 degrees Celsius or more, heat and moisture are available for rapid evaporation. 1 mark. This means warm air rises, cools, condenses, and forms storm clouds. 1 mark. Low wind shear. Where there is low wind shear, the winds are constant and stable. 1 mark. This means that storm clouds can form without being torn apart. 1 mark. So please give yourself a score out of 4, and if you would like to redraft your answer in order to improve it, that is also really, really good practice. So that is the end of our lesson today on the global distribution of tropical storms. Well done for all of your efforts. Please ensure that you complete the exit quiz so that you can check that you've understood the main key ideas from today's lesson. It might be a really good idea as well to write down the 3 main things that you've taken from the lesson just to secure that learning. Hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.